I'd like to start with you having just some ordinary pencils, really ordinary. Cy Twombly just loved ordinary graphite, any kind of old pencil. I sharpened all my pencils. And I'm just going to be working on some ordinary drawing paper, just nothing special, just sketch paper. You can draw on anything today. And this is a good opportunity to take old drawings. We're going to be painting some paper black and then some papers white. So if you have some old pads with kind of unfinished drawings, those are great to work on top of. As usual, when we draw, have an awareness of not gripping your pencil. And what we're going to start with is we're going to start with some loops. This is going to be our warm-up. If you are left-handed, do the same thing. Maybe you write and you have a, I do write like, you know, when I write, I kind of have a slant like this. I'm just going to keep doing this. And we're just starting with pencil and paper and trying not to grip the pencil loosely. And you'll notice I'm actually going off. So I have kind of a fluidity here going on. Don't worry, don't think you're making a drawing. We're probably going to paint over this anyway. While you do this, I'm going to turn this over and keep going. While you do this, it is very recommended to have your feet planted on the floor, or if you're standing, even if you're sitting, if you have your legs crossed, that can kind of stop energy. And everything today is about energy, because Cy Twombly's work is really about energetic systems of drawing and mark making, vitality, mark making. When you draw, see if you can be in touch with your breath. And try not to think, try not to worry, try not to be concerned about if you're using the right pencil. I just got all these pencils out of a box and sharpened them. Maybe I'll go right over here. These are just loops, right? Loops. You can use any kind of pencil for this. I could use charcoal. There's this. Hi, Lisa. We're just starting with some drawing. Grab another piece of paper. Oh, I'm using some old funky paper. I'll just turn that over. I love to recycle paper. In a minute, we're going to change to some words. I will give you lots of history today about the artist Cy Twombly. If you're in the Boston area, there's a big show at the MFA. And it'll be really fun for you to see the show after this class. I know some of you have seen the show. Breathing. If you can, when you're doing this, think about the shoulder attached to the arm and the hand that is drawing. If you can think about that joint of your shoulder moving and not being locked, nothing's locked, even legs and feet and jaw and brain, trying to relax. The repetitive motion of drawing It's really good. I usually get everybody really going, and then I give you a verbal history lesson, talk about the artist's life and his work. Learned a lot about him. I love doing these classes because the day it snowed around Boston a few days ago, not the rain that never turned to snow, but the day it really snowed, I just stayed in a chair and read about Twombly for like 6 hours. It's so nice. I do believe that if we emulate other artists and kind of get into their brains and their hands and the way they made art, it's a really great lesson. I think it's really healthy. I was trained that way in art school. Study other people's art, really understand them and paint like them, and I think it's healthy. I think it's great. All right, now change it up a little bit. I'm going to give you a poem. This is T.S. Eliot. And if you can just write this down on a piece of paper. Where did I write it? I wrote it another. What we call, the beginning, what we call the beginning is often the end. Period. And to make an end is to make a beginning. Period. The end is where we start from. This is T.S. Eliot. Okay, so write that down so you have it in front of you, because in a minute we're going to do a whole bunch of drawing exercises with these words. So what we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. T.S. Eliot. Okay, now I'm going to get another piece of paper. And I'll just leave that just for a couple of minutes just so you can copy that down. I know I'm really quick. I'm a little too quick. Neurotically quick. I need things to slow me down. Okay. Now I'm just going to take, I'm just using ordinary pencils, but if I have drawing pencils, I can use those too. It doesn't really matter. I just have a bunch of pencils. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to write the poem across the page. And I'm just going to have it I'm going to write it like this. What we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a beginning. I need to just really let my arm go. The end is where we start from. This is too hard for me to do, so I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to say what we call the beginning is often the end. I'm just going to do the end is where we start from. That's all I'm going to do. The end is where we start from. My brain can only do one phrase, and I'm going to get faster. The end is where we start from. The end is where we start from. It's really a rhythm. The end is where we start from. I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to go even faster. The end, no, I can't, is where we start from. I'm going to get messier. The end is where we start from. The end is where we start from. The end is where we start from. The end is where. T.S. Eliot. It's hard to write that. Okay. It's not that easy to do this. Keep going. The end You couldn't do this if you weren't really making sure you're breathing and sitting in a relaxed way. And actually, it's good to roll your shoulders a little bit, stop once in a while, shake out your body. When Cy Twombly did this, he usually had huge drawing paper on the wall or raw canvas. And he's using his whole body. You know, we're going to be doing an augmented, you know, Cy Twombly technique class, obviously. All right. Quite a few pieces of paper. I have an old piece of paper with some old collage on it. I'm just going to work right on top of this. I'm going to start writing without making much sense. I'm going to write things that nobody can. I don't want anybody to be able to read this. See if you can make your handwriting absolutely indecipherable. See if you can throw your pet's name in there. Your mother's name. Your own name. Or no name. I want you to now write fast across these pages so that no one can understand what you're writing. It's really in code. And watch how I go off the page. Okay. Now see if you can start to really kind of, this is what happens to me. I just want to start to like, okay. Starts to kind of go crazy, the arm. Maybe throw a little colored pencil in there, just feel like it. I don't know why. Marks. Marks like swords. Intensity in one place. off your page, really moving your body. It's in the body. It's really body art, this stuff that he's doing. Really body art. And yes, children do draw like this. And guess who's always trying to get back to being like a child? Picasso, de Kooning, Joan Mitchell, trying to get some of the marks that we were so free with when we were children. Go see the show in Boston if you can and ask yourself, oh, could my 4-year-old do that? Well, this is a man who spent his whole life making these marks. A whole life of painting, drawing, a lot of drawing. And these are very nice marks left on what I call the catch-all. The catch-all is the paper that goes under everything. Very important today. Have paper underneath. If you just add newspaper, that's fine too, but it makes a really beautiful surface. Oh, just want to shake it all out. I had to sharpen a lot of pencils. Maybe a little pen. Maybe throw some pen in there. Anything. Draw with anything. We're going to be painting over these, so you don't have to think, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life right now? Don't worry about it. You can make some very cool stuff today, I think. All right, now get a fresh piece of paper. And I want you to think about the paper as being liquid marble, which is actually what he said. He felt like paper and white paint, white paper and white paint was his marble. And I want you to do something very messy in one part of it. Lots of little marks, maybe colored pencils, maybe pastels. You can use anything that you can grab. But leave a lot of this blank. Ordinary pencils. Maybe some bunched up marks. See if I can find a bunched up color that is speaking to me right now. Drawing as a form of energy. It is energy. Don't worry, you're going to get a big history lesson. I just like to launch everybody. I will talk about when he was born, where he was born, where he lived, what did he do. And we'll talk about that. But I like to get everybody moving. This is meant to be an active art class. So Twombly really liked to leave space. Sometimes he filled everything up and sometimes he leaves space. Okay. So that could be a side Twombly drawing right there. Again, concentration of marks. In one spot. I had to have a cup of coffee later than I usually do because I knew that this kind of mark making is very physical, very athletic, actually. I have some of these pastels. Any kind of pastels, oil pastels or water soluble. These are Caran d'Ache water soluble color wax pastels. You can use anything. You can use oil pastels. Just gonna grab a couple of colors. Sometimes he does these little. He ends up doing a lot of flower forms actually. Twombly, man. We're mimicking him. Is it healthy to imitate other artists? Very. A long-standing artistic tradition in learning. I was once asked to copy oh God, I'm forgetting his name. Okay, the wonderful, not or Arthur Dove, John Marin. Can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Arthur Dove, but it was one of those painters. And I learned so much about this artist by doing a big canvas and copying him. And then on the back, when I sold it to the art consultant, the customer wanted a large painting by this artist. And I wrote in huge letters on the back, you know, after the artist. Like, I wasn't trying to pretend to be them. I just did a copy. And it's such a great lesson. Energy systems. All right. This concludes some of the drawing warm up, and now we're going to do something really different. What I want to do now is I want to paint paper black or white. We want to have a couple of each. So I'm just going to take this. I use some really cheap paint for this. It's just Blick acrylic, acrylic titanium white. And I keep my white in this little thing. Just get one of my cheap brushes. And I'm going to put it on pretty thickly because I want this to dry. So this is the next part of the class. We need to do this fairly early in the class so that this stuff will dry. So this paint, how thick is it? This paint is very inexpensive, and so it's not that thick. It's not like the paint out of the tube, but it doesn't matter what kind of white you use. And you can see my drawing a tiny bit through here, but it doesn't matter.
Excuse me, Alexandra, are you using any water?
I'm not using water in this.
Thank you.
And you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, you know, like I'm going over a gray drawing. So it's a little bit, you can see some of the drawing underneath. That's fine. By the way, doing very mundane tasks in the studio, like painting a piece of paper white, is painting. And we might have illusions about artists like in their studio being super creative all the time, but sometimes they're just painting stuff white, getting a canvas ready, or some people paint paper with gesso and then paint oil paintings on top. And acrylic dries incredibly fast. This is going to dry really fast. I'm going to do another one. I can also just, sometimes I just put the paint right on. White was his marble. Paint, white paint was his marble. White paper. And sometimes gray paper and sometimes black paper, because marble comes in different colors, of course. I'm putting on pretty thick. And the rougher the better, really. You don't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be smooth. It's kind of, you don't want such big gushes of paint though that it would take like an hour to dry. You want it to dry in like 10 minutes, and it will. Stuff dries fast. Put that aside. And while you're doing that, because I know I'm super fast and I have everything at my fingertips, and you guys might not, so I'm going to start to tell you about this guy. So I'm going to let this dry. This is nice writing, I like it. Okay, black. Well, guess what? I have Blick acrylic black. Just throw this on here. And I need a brush for that. And look at how beautiful this surface is getting, really nice. I'm not adding water to this paint, but this is kind of a cheap. I buy really good paints, but I do get this cheaper kind in black and white because I use so much black and white. By the way, cheaper paint just means there's less pigmentation in a cheaper paint. It's still great. I wonder if I can. Catch-alls get really beautiful here. We do need to do this. I would say at least 2 of each, 2 blacks, 2 whites. It's a lot of paint. It's wonderful how fast acrylic dries. It's really great. That's why I started using acrylics more, because when I became a collage teacher, it's really hard to make collages with oil paintings. Oil paintings on paper, very hard because they take so long to dry. I was a landscape painter and I used oils for 25 years. I really miss them, but you can't do everything. Just can't. Try to, but I think I have a little too much paint, so I think I might take a little bit off of this maybe. I'm gonna put it into this little jar. I just put way too much paint here. It's gonna take forever to dry. Paint dries according to what temperature it is in your studio. In the summer, things of course dry much faster. It's damp out, but I've got the heat on in here, so that helps. And you can have a hair dryer. I use a hair dryer a lot to speed up the drying process. I've got a couple blacks, a couple whites. And I'm just going to check to see how my white is doing. And it's going to take a little longer to dry. Okay, so while that stuff is drying, I'm going to do one more color. I'm going to get a little container like this. And we're going to make a blackboard chalk color. I'm going to put some white in here. My white's getting empty, so it's so much paint for this. Okay, I've got. I'll put some in here too because we're going to do two different blackboard colors. So I Twombly did blackboard paintings. I've got some white in each, and I'm going to put some of the black paint in each. Oops, just being really messy. Messy's good because he was very messy. I'm putting some black and white together. And I'm going to put some black in here too, but I'm going to put less black in one of them. So I'm going to make a light gray and a darker gray. Now, the thing about a blackboard color is that I've got a lighter gray and a darker gray, just black and white. I see quite a lot of, it feels like purple. Any kind of purple, just a little bit of purple. I have some violet here. You could have some, just a little, I'm just gonna put it on my finger to show you how little that is. I you can't really see it. I'm just gonna add a little bit of purple. There's kind of a purpley sheen to, sort of a bluish. I'm just adding a tiny bit of violet or purple. A little bit more. I'm going really easy with this color. This time, I'm going to add a tiny bit of water, just a couple of drops. This paint is thicker. A little bit, just a few drops of water. A little bit of purple into my light gray. I'm just going to see what this looks like now. Mix it really well. Beautiful color. I'm going to add even more purple. I want it to have a little bit more. I could have also added a little bit of brown. Chalkboards are all different. And so Twombly did a lot of different chalkboards. Yeah, that just feels so pretty. It has a kind of glow to it. A little bit of purple added. Okay, and then, So I just had white, black, and a little bit of purple. I'm going to paint a piece of paper with this. Didn't make that much paint, so I'm going to do it on a smaller piece of paper. So after this class, if you haven't seen the show in Boston and you are in this area, it's kind of a must see. You can also see Frank Bowling's show. Pretty amazing abstract artist. Well, okay, let this dry somewhere.
Alexandra, so we're covering up whatever we did before?
No, nope. Oh, well, the drawings, yeah.
Does it have to, can I just do a plain black on a plain piece of paper?
Of course, I just did, yeah. You don't
'Cause
have to, yeah. I just have so
I
many.
want to be able to see the stuff that's underneath, so.
No, I know, and but we're going to be doing more of it, believe me. Just gonna, yeah, that's a good point, Libby. You don't have to cover up all your drawings. Now this time, I'm going to make a darker. I want to make a darker gray. I want to do a much darker gray, and I'm going to add a little bit of dark blue. It really doesn't matter what blue, just a little bit of blue, because I've just really noticed there's quite a lot of color in some blackboard paintings he did. And in blackboards in general, there's kind of, they're all different, of course. Just adding a tiny few drops of water. I just usually do it with my hand, just a little bit. It's like sandcastle painting. Nice dark gray, add a little bit of blue. Doesn't matter what blue you add. I wouldn't, but probably one of the dark blues like ultramarine blue or Prussian blue. This can be a very beautiful color. So sometimes gray that's only black and white has this sort of battleship flatness. And then so it's always nice to doctor grays with either browns or anything really, like a gray, battleship gray with a little bit of orange in it just gets really beautiful. Because sometimes that battleship gray is really awful. It's so flat. So just adding a little purple or a little blue in this case. Look at how beautiful that is. Ah, gorgeous color. Okay. Getting paint on my notes, that's dangerous. The more kind of messily painted, the better. This is really nice because I saw his blackboard paintings in person Sunday, and the paint's very uneven. And this is really nice. I don't know if you can really see it, but there's kind of an unevenness. I didn't totally mix the colors that well. I can't wait to tell you about his life. I can't wait to. It's so interesting. Really fascinating life, actually. And so once we have papers painted, then we'll have a few minutes to for me to talk about him, because we need this stuff to dry, and it will dry. And it's even okay if it's not completely dry. Don't worry about that. I don't know if anybody can really tell the difference, but by adding that ultramarine blue to this dark gray, it just got so beautiful. And Cy Twombly got really practiced at making these blackboard paintings, did a lot of them. Voilà. Fini. It's really hard for me to figure out where to put things. Now I just need a clean surface to put the book on. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do the blackboard color. Isn't it amazing? We actually will get to collage, I promise. So you can just listen to me while I start to talk about Twombly. Put this down because I have a book I just bought for the teaching this class. So this show, this is actually a huge book, but it's a catalog for the show that was at the Getty in California. And the show moved to Boston, where it is now. And it's called Making Past Present. And this is Lead in the Swan. Some people liken this piece on the cover as being sort of an explosive, orgasmic scene of actually the rape of Leda. This Zeus puts himself in the body of a swan to make love to her, but it's really a violation. And so it's this explosion. All right, so I'm just going to leave this open on some of his paintings. Let's see if I can find one of the blackboards. Well, this is a wonderful collage. I love this collage. This piece is really beautiful. And you'll just notice the marks on here. A lot of sculpture, huge paintings. And I'm going to talk a lot about him, so just get ready for it. I love this kind of work. A lot of erasure. We didn't get into the erasure. We're going to have to do that. I'm going to make just a note. I did that in my drawing class, a lot of erasing. See the handwriting? And yes, he did paint in color. He did lots of color. Just so that you are aware of it, lots of color. Toward the end of his life, that was 2009. He died in 2011. Really got into color, the end of his life. Okay, what should I leave it on? I'll just leave it on anything here. Okay, so he was born in 1928. He died in 2011. He was 83. He was born in Virginia. Lexington, Virginia. He went to the Boston Museum School as a young man, and he was walking over to the museum and seeing all the artifacts. The MFA in Boston is very famous for its Egyptian collection, its Roman artifacts, huge collection of fragments and pieces from ancient Greece. Incredible collection at the MFA. He was seeing all this. In the night when he was at the museum school, shortly after, he got a fellowship which enabled him to travel with Robert Rauschenberg. And Rauschenberg is a really well-known artist that you need to know about if you haven't heard of him, especially in terms of collage. But he and Bob Rauschenberg, they went to North Africa and Italy, and this kind of began a life of travel and passion for travel. They were both 24 when they went to on this trip. He had gotten a scholarship to travel fellowship for $1,800, and he shared it with Rauschenberg. They were lovers, and he gets really influenced by the traveling. He hears about these famous women who traveled in the 19th century all around North Africa disguised as men. There was a woman named Jane Digby and a woman named Isabel Eberhardt. And these were women that women were not allowed in a lot of the temples and a lot of the places in places like Egypt and Morocco. And they disguised themselves as men and they wrote these travel journals. And Cy Twombly got really into travel journals. And he was also, I want you to be aware that when he got to Italy, it was the early 50s and the country was a wreck. There was so much decaying, after effects of World War II. And it was incredibly beautiful, but things were in ruins and the ruins were in ruins. It was kind of this decayed, gorgeous grandeur. And it was beautiful and painful. He never really went back. I mean, he did go back for a while because he went to the Art Students League in New York for a while. But then he moved to Italy forever when he was in his late 20s. And he lived there for his whole life. He would return to Lexington, Virginia sometimes. He struck up a friendship with Sally Mann, the wonderful younger photographer from Virginia, who also, Sally Mann is a photographer known for her kind of beautiful, sorrowful photographs of decaying mansions in the South and trees and cemeteries, a kind of love of deterioration and relics, of things antiqued. So he ends up in his late 20s marrying a very wealthy woman. And they probably had some kind of arrangement because I think she just let him paint and he did not have to work. He did not have to make money and he didn't have to worry about money. And he had an incredible studio in Rome. They did have one child. Later, he had a companion that was a man for many years. And I think it was kind of an open marriage. And he had not only the studio in Rome, but he also had a studio in the countryside north of Rome. And then he also got another one near Naples that looked out over the sea in a small village. So he had a pretty amazing situation to make art. This is something I find all the time, that artists sometimes are able to have some kind of benefactor who takes care of them. And I think this woman took care of him. He also starts seriously collecting art. He collects old books. He collects things that are not worth very much. And then he also collects things that, are very beautiful from the flea markets in Rome, like sculptures. I'll see if I can find some pictures of him. He just collected little heads and all kinds of things that are beautiful. Look at this, isn't this gorgeous? So he is constantly reading poetry. He's constantly reading travel logs by really wonderful travel writers. And he's pretty obsessed with antiquity and mythology. And I just want to check to see if our paper, I don't want to drive you too crazy with too much history, but I just got to get through it a little bit. So just allow me to get through this. He's suggesting things in his work, clues. People think he's super intellectual, but actually I found that he wasn't. He had little books about poetry in Latin, and he would just like the sounding of a word. He actually never learned to read or write Latin. And apparently his Italian was abysmal, even after living there for 50 years or 40 years. But he loved the sound of the words. There's a picture of him in his studio. Some people think he had a little bit of synesthesia, which is when you hear music but see shapes. It's an interplay between senses. Like you might taste a shape and hear color. There's certain artists that are said to have that, maybe Paul Klee a little bit. Color, materials, language, graphic markings, names, text, poetry, and his invocations of sounds and voices, connections to the ancient past. Color is simplified. He often has like red and pink to kind of represent flesh, brown to represent the earth, green for the woods. And the whites are always atmospheric, ethereal clouds, mists, but also the sense of crumbling chalk, crumbling ruins, eroded lime, bleached bones, ruins, mists, dilution. It's kind of interesting, the words that come up with his work. So there is erosion, scratched drawings, buried parts and bits, archaeology of painted surfaces. A couple words I came up with that are really wonderful art words are pentimento, which means the visible trace of what's underneath the language in a painting of stuff underneath. And palimpsest is another great word, is when they would scrape artwork down to make fresh words. And often monks would do that on the papyrus pads. I really like this. For Twombly, the hands-on working of the materials is key. His was a lifetime effort to create a flow from his body to the paper or the canvas. He learned encaustic at the museum school as a young student, and he ends up using crayons a lot later and kind of getting, that I don't know if you know what encaustic is, but it's heated beeswax and pigment sort of fused onto paper or a canvas or a surface. And you can actually just melt, you can put a crayon on a hot plate and then draw with it. And that's kind of like, that's like a rough form of encaustic. Many of his paintings reveal layers and produce the effect of an aged surface. He's using names, epithets, and texts, often naming mythical figures like Narcissus or Proteus or Hyacinth or Leda and the Swan. He loved flux. My painting is not fixed. I show things in flux. I respond to the Greek love of metamorphosis. And actually, the idea of metamorphosis, this is a really interesting man who was divided between countries, kind of hated the art world and tried to stay away from it. Actually had a show in the 1960s in New York that was a huge, abysmal failure. Now his paintings are priceless, but they weren't, in the 60s and 70s. He was kind of rejected. People thought he just made scribbles. But he, you could say his sexuality was very divided. His love of America and another country. He makes errors, and we wonder if they are intentional, tongue-in-cheek, or showing a carelessness which emphasizes the opposite of studiousness. He misspells a lot of the names of the gods and even poems. He kind of makes these mistakes, and you think that maybe he's kind of trying to tell you, look, I'm not that wordy. I just love the visualness of some of this language. I don't know. I want to tell you what his materials were. First of all, really involved with sculpture. And I'm just going to show a little bit of the sculpture that he did. Because sculpture is huge to him. It's just as important as his painting, but I'm not going to talk about it that much today. But you can see they look like fragments. It's obsessed with fragments. So the sculpture, he used plaster, sand, wood, stone, nails, paint, and in his paintings, he's got paper, oil paint, graphite, colored pencils, crayons, acrylics, chalks, gesso, house paint, a lot of house paint, he liked it, oil pastels, synthetic resin. He loved the line of the pencil. He loved glyphs, which are hieroglyphic characters or symbols. He liked things to be indecipherable. He wanted an intuitive feel, eroded in ancient surfaces, shards, fragments, inscription, and erasure. These were some of the things he made and collected. These are antiques he collected, and then his sculpture. He wrote, to paint involves a certain crisis, or at least a crucial moment or sensation or release. Each line now is the actual experience with its own innate history. It does not illustrate, it is the sensation of its own realization. He had gone to Black Mountain when he was a young man, which was a summer program in North Carolina. It was open in the 50s. It influenced a lot of important people like John Cage, Rauschenberg, Motherwell, Annie Albers. They were really influenced by a poet there named Charles Olson, and he wrote the head by way of the ear to the syllable, the heart by way of the breath to the line. It's like everything is sort of spiritual, but it ends up being through to the line. I love that. Twombly's pencil lines, the flow of writing, the varying layouts, the physicality of his hands in paint to bring forth a concentration and essence. Somebody said that. The eye, the ear, the mind, we read his work, even if it's one word, like a musical notation. Lots of connections between poetry and Twombly. So he was influenced by John Cage at Black Mountain, and John Cage was a musician who got really into the silences between notes and blank space, blank white space in music or in art. Rauschenberg did white paintings, and Twombly gets really involved in the space in paintings. So that you have pieces like this, I'll just find something, where almost everything is just painted out. It's almost erased. There's an erasure. And a drawing where there's almost one thing is kind of erased. There's a lot of emptiness in this collage. And he's using drawing paper, line paper, postcard sticker, transparent adhesive tape, watercolor, wax crayon, graphite, and ink on paper. This is his sketchbook from when he went to Africa, North Africa. Sketchbooks, a lot of sketchbooks. Obsessed by fragments, I think I said that. Wordplay, spontaneity, intuitive. I like poets because I can find a condensed phrase, the essence of something. I always look for the phrase. They're like visual amalgams. Remember amalgams? Like when you go to the dentist, an amalgam means a mixture or a blend. Visual blends. He had this copy of translated Greek poetry, which apparently he was obsessed with. And he would just open it up and choose a line from Greek poetry. And then like often of Sappho, fragments, torn little things right out of the book, and he'd throw that in. A lot of his work ends up being about war, because of course in mythology, there's shitloads of war. And there's a lot of the sculptures are often chariots and weapons. His paintings often refer to death and violence and a kind of, probably an internal war. I don't know. He was sort of he started to really earn money, but he made no money for the first 15 years of being an artist. And that must have been kind of painful. Apparently he was sort of a so-so father and didn't show up very much as a dad until later. War abounds in his later work. And he said, there has to be a history behind the thoughts. Each finds personal truths, contemporary meaning in the historical text. He's looking at a lot of stuff. I made lists of artists he was looking at. He was definitely looking at Giacometti's drawings. If you haven't seen Giacometti's drawings, they're a must. Finding marks that felt alive, a vitality and exploration, a tension. There's a lot of tension and unrest in this work. You really feel it when you see the work in person. Of course, there's nothing like seeing work in person. It's so valuable. He'd use poetry. He'd edit poems and take them down to essential words that spoke to him. He'd study the Greek myths, read, gathering information and energy. Then he'd work and they would explode out. He's a precursor to Jean-Michel Basquiat. He's definitely, you know, Basquiat definitely looked at this guy. And so did Andy Warhol. The energy of the stories, the death and the vitality, the primordial aspect, the river Styx, the passing of time, the eternal present. He's trying to find his way into all this. It's just so beautiful. Rilke wrote, "And we who have always thought of happiness climbing would feel the emotion that almost startles when happiness falls." So these are the phrases by other poets that show up in his paintings. And let's see if my white is dry. I think it probably is. It's dry. Okay. Okay, so you can do the next thing with a pencil. You could also use what I love to use. I love to use this stick that I've sharpened into little, it's just a branch that I've kind of sharpened. But I could have used any one of my pencils. You can kind of screw a pencil up to draw into paint, but first I'll just show you what we're doing. If my paper's all funky like this, I sometimes roll it backwards. And that way it's not so flat it a little bit like that. Flatter. Okay, so now I'm going to take a bunch of black. I'm going to put a lot of black in here. I just need to have a lot of black. Need another brush. Getting some of this gray off of my brush. I always paint colors out on paper. That way you put less paint into the water system. Okay, you're gonna want to watch this. I'm gonna paint very quickly black paint all over my white dry paper. Now remember, we're emulating this artist. That's what we're doing. I think we're going to get to some cool collage at the end of the class, but this is emulating some of his techniques. Wow, this is nice and wet. Now I'm going to take my stick or my pencil. And that's all I'm going to do on that one. That's one of his techniques. Light under, dark over. While it's wet, draw into it. Now, you might ask me, well, couldn't I have just put black paint on a piece of white paper and done this? No, it doesn't work as well. It looks sort of half-baked. You get this really nice contrast. Now, you could also do words. Like I could do words down here. But you have to do this fast. You can see it's already starting to change, although I like the way it looks when it's not as bright too. Okay, so black paint, draw into it. You are emulating Cy Twombly. You're learning some of his techniques. This is a really wonderful one. Then we're going to do the reverse. We'll do white over black paper and do the same thing. And I will show you some of the ones I did yesterday. Where are they? So I did them on blackboards. Blackboard color rather. And I did this one really messy. These are the ones I did yesterday, getting ready to do this class. I did a small one. This is what happens if you do one on paper, on white paper. You kind of get some stuff, but not that much. The paint seeps in and you just don't get a really good mark. That's all I did. Oh, I did one more.
I just did it with gray because I had thrown out my black and it comes out fine. Gray over white.
It's very beautiful, isn't it?
Yes.
It's really beautiful. Now I could actually go over this gray and see what happens with gray. It may not be a really good contrast. I'll just see. I can also try and use a larger tool or a skinnier tool. He tends to always go back to pencils. He uses a lot of graphite, which is pencil. Yeah, it's not that much contrast because it's black and gray. It's kind of nice. I really like the contrast of white and black and white, but that's okay. Not sure. It doesn't really do much. That's kind of okay. Okay, and now I'm going to do the reverse. White on top of black, do the same thing. Very painterly and uneven painting going over surfaces. You don't have to get things smooth. It's nice to have some of that pentimenti under the kind of you feel a black under the white when you put a white on top. Pretty nice, huh? I love it. I think it's really beautiful. Now I could also, what if I turned it over and then did something over here? You could make some money on these. They're so beautiful. Little side Twombly lookalikes. I think they're so pretty. I mean, that would actually look really beautiful in an office. I mean, just they're so handsome in a way. So simple. I love simple. You know, this is somebody who devoted a life to this. You could say, oh, he's just, handwriting, these techniques are pretty easy, not very complicated, but this is like a lifetime. started studying Eva Hess. Got really interested in Eva Hess's drawings lately, and I'll probably do a class on her sometime. Fascinating, amazing artist. She died when she was 34 years old, probably from the materials she was using. She was using some really toxic stuff, but amazing artist. Okay, these are going to be really great for collages later. All right, gray. I'm not sure everybody has chalk, but it's not that hard to find, but I can just show it. So chalk on a blackboard, and let's find the image of his blackboard piece. Let's just see if I can find it here. Oh, I had it marked. There's one. And actually, this really is influenced by Giacometti, because this looks like a Giacometti drawing. Only Giacometti would be doing a portrait of somebody, but he did some interiors. But this really looks like Giacometti. What an idea to make paintings like a blackboard. I mean, how fascinating is that? So I had a studio in my 20s that had it was an old schoolhouse, and it had a beautiful old-fashioned bathtub in this little kind of weird space because an artist had taken it over, and the whole side of the wall next to the bathtub was an old-fashioned blackboard. I mean, it was such a beautiful studio. It's in the South End in Boston. So this is one of his blackboard paintings, and he is not using, I don't think he's using chalk, although let me look. Oil-based house paint and wax crayon on canvas. And I have a combination of things here. So I have chalk, I have white Conti crayon, I have a piece of classic chalk, and I also have somewhere here like a Caran d'Ache pencil. I just have a bunch of stuff here. Also have a oil crayon. So, I mean, there's just so many things that white comes in. Maybe, and I could get my ruler. Do a little sketch or something. Seems like he's always preoccupied with these little sort of sculpture forms. I mean, it just makes you do this, right? And now, of course, I'm loving this. Okay, so we're back. Hopefully you guys have done some of these bizarre scratchings. Love all this stuff. Okay, now what about making a collage? of all, I'll show some of the collages I have made. And I didn't really do that much on my blackboard, but you catch the gist of it. Could do more on here. It's beautiful, beautiful technique. Hollow. That looks like that's him. There he is. There's the feel of Twombly.
I'm sorry, what are you drawing with chalk or crayon?
Well, I was just doing sort of white on the blackboard.
I mean, what pencil was that? Was that a crayon?
So yeah, so I have a variety of white tools here, and any of them will do. So one is just classic chalk, and one of them is a waxy pencil. One is a colored pencil, and one is white Conti, which is a form of charcoal. All these, we've got paint on it, which is great because that's looks like him too, the sort of messy, screwed up baby. Another thing we didn't really get to. And let's just do a little bit of the erasure marks. So in other words, let's see. Just, we didn't really get to this. And erase it. I just want to do a little bit of erasure because, and it could also be on lighter paper. Any ordinary pencil maybe. And then try erasing it. What it does is it just kind of screws up the whole surface in a really good way. You could also be doing this on, I just thought it'd be good to have a little bit of that sense of, need to. Okay. Here's an old book. Tour and uses a lot of pages of books. So just to get, we didn't touch on the erasing. I want to touch on it. Or it could be charcoal. That's not working. Hard to draw on this kind of stuff. It's too shiny. Can't get any traction on it. Okay, that looks like a little. Here's a piece of paper. Okay. Anything, charcoal or pencil, just on white paper, and then go at it with an eraser. There's a lot of erasing going on inside Twombly because he loves the way what the eraser does to the marks. Erasing is so important in drawing, and it adds so much to the feel of everything. Look at that. You know, it just gets everything so funky. I just don't want you to go away from a class on Twombly with it. Playing with erasers on any kind of mark making, charcoal, pencil. So good. Very physical. This guy is really about the body in space making art. He's a very tall dude. Mark Bradford, the wonderful contemporary collage artist, right now. He's like 6'6", and his work reflects a need to make marks in space, sort of in relation to his body. And I say this for anybody's body. Like, as you all know, I love the artist Nasreen Mohammadi, who got very ill, and her drawings are so beautiful. There's this kind of delicacy because she was sick. She had Parkinson's, and I love her work because I felt like she was able to make delicate work that was about, it was sort of like, I am more than my body. I'm also a spiritual being, and my work is going to reflect that. And Matisse too, at the end of his life, he was really ill. Anyway, just interesting. So if you have the energy, attack your drawings. If you don't, draw like Nasreen, and I'll show you Nasreen. Don't have physical energy, you have to adapt your work to what your body needs to make these so weird, beautiful, delicate, spiritual drawings. I just love her work. I love it. I saw a lot of her work at this show in New York, and a long time ago, she does a lot of explosive work when she's younger, and then when she got sick in her 50s, her work completely changed. And because she had to meet the need to be an artist with the way she felt physically, which wasn't very strong, but I love her work because I think it radiates spirituality.
Alexandra, what is the artist's name that you're speaking of?
So her name is, I'm gonna write it down, Nasreen. She was Indian, from India. Mohammadi. And somebody discovered her. There was a program at the Met Breuer in New York. This woman was given the task of going around the world finding amazing artists that weren't well known. And she discovered Nasreen Mohammadi, and there was this incredible, huge show at the Met Breuer, and I just loved it. I had to go back twice in 2 days because I felt the power of her spirit come through the work. Okay, so now collage time. Okay. I'm just going to take this catch-all. I'm going to get a blank piece of paper so that people can see what I'm doing. See what I'm doing with this mess. Okay. First of all, I'll show a couple of the collages I made in the past couple of days. It's gonna be hard to show them because they're big. And this stuff continues down here, but I found some pictures and I started collaging things together. This was another one I did. This one's hard to see as well because it's too big, so I'll slide it up. I ended up collaging some little pictures here. I have a really big one, and I don't know how I'm going to show it. I can just show parts of it. So this is the top. This is a pretty big piece. And then it kind of goes down. And there's more writing on the bottom. You don't really need to see it, but this is me throwing in some of the handwriting with some collage areas. I'll just do one for the class. All right, so this is a nice piece of paper. I did find some cool stuff to collage with, and I'll show it to you. Some good ideas. Picture of Aphrodite. He did this all the time. He found pictures of the sculptures. I also got, I'm just going to show some of the stuff I chose to make collages with for the Twombly class today. It's just a weird old ad I had in a box. It's just such a weird, it's of some ground driveway or something. Some artifacts. Maps are really beautiful. A map of Italy, old paper. Ocean from a map. But the maps were so beautiful. Postcards, some old postcards of Italy, one of Paris. Some weird stuff. This is one of my great finds in the trash, were these old Italian papers of theaters. I love these. I've been using these for years in collage. It's just like, every once in a while you see something in the trash and it's just the best. Okay, so I will throw together a collage. I'm going to use my acrylic matte medium. I could use a glue stick, but I think I'm going to work a little bit large. I have, I'm tempted to make really big collages that emulate Twombly, but I just can't in class because it's too hard to. I got my brush in my matte medium. I've got scraper. I'm just going to take a piece of this. Chunk of this stuff. He works so big that I got kind of inspired to work large. I mean, I think when you study Twombly, you sort of want to work on this grandiose scale. I could have done some huge drawings, but just going to keep them smaller. I also have this thing painted. When I did a drawing class last Saturday, I had people emulate Twombly's drawings and maybe using somebody's name if it was very meaningful to them. I'm going to turn this upside down. And so I use the word Jenny. The name Jenny, it's an important person. My history. it's very meaningful if you make art about somebody's name, especially somebody who might have died. That can be very powerful. Really good friend of mine's sister, Jenny, died a long time ago, quite a few years ago now, but I just made a lot of artwork about Jenny and sent it to my friend. I just sometimes used her name and sometimes made collages just about her. It was very powerful for my friend to receive those, and it's amazing to make something for somebody when they're really grieving. There's something about a lot of Cy Twombly's work that has the feeling of epithet, memory, people gone. Now, maybe then I would take, it's so bumpy. It's really hard to get things flat. The thicker the paper, the harder it is to get things flat. I sometimes just feel it to see where the bumps are. Now, what if I just went over this a little bit with a whitewash? Just some white paint. I'm actually not.
Hey, it's Gary. Sorry, I had to deal with kiddos. Can you give me just a 15-second of what we're doing right now?
Well, what I'm doing is I'm starting to make some collages. And so I just took something that I had done earlier and I'm collaging it down on a piece of mixed media paper. It can be any paper. So I'm actually just making a collage now of throwing some of this stuff together and seeing how it looks.
Okay, thanks.
So like this could just be the artwork. Kind of like that. And maybe this would go right here. Maybe we'd go square in the middle. One thing I really notice about side, I guess I have to do it sideways since this camera's, it's better for the, I know sometimes I should be teaching these on an easel, but I just haven't managed to do that. Okay, so remember his whole propensity towards things that are blank. It's often feeling like white is liquid marble. Okay, so I'm actually going to use a glue stick now because I don't know why, I just am. I feel like it. I love the glue sticks. This kind is so good. UHU stick. It's big. They're about $4 and they last quite a long time. So now, Gary, we're just starting to put together some of these papers we've made because he did a lot of collage. Maybe I'll have it offset a little bit. Not that obsessed with things being very symmetrical. Sometimes they are, but they're usually not, especially as collages. Just suddenly really want a bright white piece of paper. Or, well, there's my intuition kicking in. I just want one little chunk of white paper. That's a way to put space back into something if it gets too busy. Doesn't really feel right. That's kind of good though. Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll do some smaller collages because it's hard to work on a huge scale. Do that on Zoom. It just is. I just tend to want to with Twombly, but the other thing I noticed is that, and I am going to talk about how he did incredible color. Colored pencils are so fun to work into these things. So that could be a collage right there. Now, I wish you could see the whole thing. It's so hard to manage here. I'm starting to get an idea of it. Yeah, I'll work smaller. I like that one though. And it's bubbling up a little bit. When you collage paper onto paper, sometimes you have to go back in and flatten things because the matte medium or the glue stick, you haven't gotten it everywhere. And I just want to show, I have a huge bubble here. I'm just going to show you how I deal with that in collage. So I take a, if I want to fix a bubble, and sometimes it adds to the collage to do this, I score it with my X-Acto blade, and then I stuff in a little bit of glue. And it works really well. And actually, I love the way that little marks look. So sometimes I do it on purpose, just because I like the lines of the X-Acto blade. And then you can also just draw with an X-Acto blade. Strangely enough, watch what happens if I have to be careful because I don't want to go through the whole thing. Watch what happens if I take my X-Acto blade and I mark, I scratch. I don't want to go through the whole thing. I've collaged on a fairly heavy piece of paper. It's like a mixed media paper. It's like construction paper a little bit. And I'm starting to score this surface with the X-Acto blade. Then watch what happens if I take my black paint and I go over the scores, okay? And then I take a sponge and I take the paint off. It's a little labor intensive. I'm gonna keep going. Should have another sponge, but I only have one. Didn't work that well, but it probably will. The ink is, it's not working that well. I didn't realize this is ink is coming off, but it actually is kind of beautiful because you get these little slashes, which are kind of wonderful. Let's see if I can do it. See if I can give you a better example of that. Do it right one. Let's try it again. Take my X-Acto blade. And slash into this piece. Paint it with black. That's so beautiful when it works. All these techniques, they, you have to fight for them. You have to try something and then it's the wrong paper and then you do it again and then it gets better. So Cy Twombly, yes. I do need more sponges and more clean water and I don't want to take the time to. But look at how beautiful that surface becomes. Look at those marks. They're so nice. They're beautiful. Love them. And I could just keep cleaning it. It's going to get even more interesting. This, somebody came into my studio a few hours ago and they asked me how I got the surface, and unfortunately I have absolutely no idea. I have no idea how I did this. I just don't know. Can't remember. I think it was oil pastel and tons of it, and then a whitewash over it. And but I'm not really sure. I don't know how to do it. But look, aren't these fun? These marks, so nice. Okay, so now let's do some smaller collages that are easier for you to see. Before I start a collage, I'm not going to have time to show you color, but I want you to see that this guy did at the end of his life, and I think I showed a couple of examples of this. This is me copying him. Couple of examples of really colorful stuff. He was starting to get into really, really bright color. And he did tons of these flowers. And I kind of forget what the peony represents. I have it all written down, but I don't know where it is. So. The peony blossoms and roses, peony named after Paeon, god of medicine and healing, turned into a peony by Zeus. And also, he wrote, rose brief is its beauty, just the scent better than fame. That was on one of his paintings. Rose brief is its beauty, just the scent better than fame. Oh, color explosion is also part of his lexicon. And we don't have time to get into the color. I actually really practiced that so I could show you how to mix those insane colors. And one of the things I found was that he might have enjoyed some of these fluorescent goldens colors because he was getting into such intense color. And so I mixed up, I'll just show them these really bright colors. And I mean, just insanely beautiful and bright. Lots of colored pencils he was using, a lot of oil pastels and crayons. I think I'm just going to cut this down so you can see the whole collage I'm working on. I just want to make an example of, make a smaller piece so you see them start to finish. old collage. Just throwing down some stuff. This advertisement I found that I thought looked kind of strange and surreal. And I have 2 boxes of pictures and things I've collected that I look through sometimes if I'm doing a class like this, and I look for things that maybe would have caught Cy Twombly's eye. Try to think like him or her, whichever artist I'm copying. Whole trick of collaging is that you just put the matte medium back in. That way you know you're really flushing out all that medium, and that's, you're flattening the piece like crazy against the so to make this collage, I've chosen a piece of Bristol as my substrate. I don't always use substrates. Some of the stuff I did yesterday, the collages I made, were just on sketch paper. Every once in a while. Actually, this would be cool just to fold this back over. It's kind of cool paper. Why not? Just for fun. I like the way that looks. The idea is to make art until it kind of makes you. Like you just follow you start to fall into kind of a groove where you don't feel like it's really you making art. The art is kind of dictating. The materials start to dictate to you, I think. In music, people, my brother who's a musician refers to it as this space about 14 inches above a person's head. There's this stream of collective musical energy from musicians all over the planet. And that's when you work, you want to get into the zone where you tap into that space. And I think as artists, we can do the same thing. This is something I've never done in my life, but all of a sudden I feel like tucking the little edges over. It's kind of fun to do that. Got some really nice pictures. Found these unbelievable cyanotypes. Love them. I found them in an antique store in Acton. And I use them all the time. Love them. So his collages, he's grabbing quite a few things that he finds: postcards, maps, blank paper, pictures of antiquities. I could also do some of my own little techniques, right? Where just try it. Just seems like it just needs to be white, actually. Oh, that's it. Put a splash. Be too much. Just a little bit of. Okay, maybe a little collage, little. Ooh, I made a mess. What happens when you study other artists is that a little bit of it sinks into you and influences your work. Happens every time I really didn't know this guy's work well. I didn't know his work, and now I really do. And I feel like I've learned so much about him by emulating him.